Hi, Nigel here with the Drivewire, and this is the 2022 Golf GTI Autobahn. And contrary to popular belief, it was not the first hot hatchback. That, in fact, was the 1973 Simca 1100 Ti, which had a 1.3-litre engine, 2 Weber carburetors, and made 82 horsepower. Not a whole lot by modern standards, but when it landed in 1973, its sub 12 second 0 to 60 time and 105 mile/hour top speed were considered fast. It also wasn't the second hot hatch. It was beaten by a mere few months by the Renault 5 Gordini. The Gordini had a 1.4-litre engine mounted behind the front wheels for better balance, made 92 horsepower and could hit 0 to 60 in 9.7 seconds with a top speed of 105 miles per hour. But who cares, because nobody remembers those two cars, because this car, the Golf GTI, is the spiritual father of the hot hatch. It's the beginning, it's genesis of the hot hatch, and they've been around since 1975. So today we're going to test this car, we're going to drive it, we're going to take a look at the interior, the exterior, and I'm going to give you my opinion on what I think of this all-new Mark 8 Golf GTI. If you remember, that Mark 1 from 1975 had a 1.6-litre engine, 109 horsepower, 108 foot-pounds of torque, and it was driven through a manual transmission in those days and went from 0 to 60 in 8.8 seconds, thanks to the fact that it only weighed a shade over 1,800 pounds. This one, the Mark 8, weighs in at around 3,200. Now, from the outside, it definitely looks like a GTI. Nobody wants to upset the GTI owners, new or old, so VW has made it look the boxy shape that it's always been. So from the rear, I think it looks fairly similar. There's been some subtle changes. It's still got these big exhausts out of the back here. It's got the new VW badge, and then they've relocated the GTI badge to the center, which is fairly typical these days. There's a slight redesign of the rear hatch and the rear bumper, and then these new slightly redesigned lights with this strange little section right here. But to all intents and purposes, it's very much the same. From the front, it is unmistakably a GTI with some subtle changes. Now, the front sort of slopes a lot more than it did. That's one design feature that I'm not 100% sure about. This is new too. The honeycomb grille now extends all the way around. It wraps around underneath the bumper. It's got these really cool looking fog lights, slightly narrower LED lights here, the big VW badge and the small GTI badge here. But yeah, it is unmistakably a GTI, which is exactly what you want. So wheels are specific to the Autobahn. It gets these 19-inch wheels. The SE and the S get 18-inch rims, and then these are summer tires from Bridgestone. Actually pretty low profile. I would tend to not go as low profile. Can tend to ride it a little bit harsh with these tires. In fact, I think you'd do pretty good with using the 18-inch rims anyway. Now, the Mark 8 has the same chassis. It's just a little bit stiffer than before. VW reworked the suspension a bit for obviously better performance. There's some software updates, a new vehicle dynamics manager that manages the electronic stability control, electronic differential locks, and the adaptive damping as well, which makes this car handle, as you will see later on, better than any GTI that I've ever driven. So there's 3 choices to choose from. This Autobahn, top of the range, comes in around 40K. That does include the DSG transmission. Then there's the SE, that comes in around 35. And then the S, which is the base model, is around 30K. My choice, I think, which is the Goldilocks choice, would be the SE, because it doesn't have a sunroof, which is a waste of space for me and adds weight. And you can also option the excellent Hard & Common stereo system, and if you wanted to add the leather seats. I wouldn't, but it's your choice. So in the rear, you get the utility of a hatchback. I still like that badge that opens up the back here. You got a rear parcel cover. Underneath here, you get a spare wheel, which is very generous. The seats all fold flat. If you leave them up, there's about 17.5 cubic feet of space. If you put them all down flat, you end up with around 53 cubic feet. So the utility is there. That's what a GTI is meant for. Utility, carrying stuff your granny's antiques, a few dogs, or herring around like a lunatic on your own at the weekend. So under the hood you get a reworked version of the very popular 2.0 turbo engine. It's been around for many years and is a very, very good engine. This one puts out 241 horsepower, so a bump in power and then a bump in torque to 273 foot-pounds, and you can really feel that. This one's a 7-speed DSG. Obviously you can get a 6-speed manual. This one will get to 60 in around 5.1 seconds, so it's about 0.8 of a second quicker than the old model. Back seats are pretty good actually, they're quite comfortable. You can't, from what I see, move them back and forth, so you're a little bit upright, but generally good. A little bit of headroom as well. Got this armrest here, which is decently comfortable for your arm, couple of cup holders, and then right here, vents, and then in this Autobahn edition, the seats are heated as well. Not too bad, but wouldn't want to spend too much time in it. And then there's a couple of nice little pockets here, which are really cool for phones, and then a little bit more space here for a larger iPad, tablet, etc. And then some of the quality is a little scratchy there, but otherwise it's not a bad place to be at all. So here we are inside, and welcome to the world of no physical buttons. There are a couple, but none of them are really useful, particularly when you're driving. But let's start off with some positives. These seats are excellent. They're leather covered because this is the Autobahn edition, although if you spec the SE you can opt for these for a little bit more money. They've got memory. They're fully electric on this side and sort of partially electric for the passenger, height, backwards, forwards, tilt, etc. Anything that you need. Same with the wheel. It tilts, it telescopes, and it's got a lot of not buttons on the steering wheel here, which are also slightly annoying. But the material quality is good. It isn't as good as I've seen in previous editions of the GTI, so I'm a little bit disappointed there. And then this one has a sunroof, which together with this horrible mesh that Audi used to use, but apparently they've done away with, I find it lets the sun through. I don't like sunroofs, so I wouldn't spec it, so I probably wouldn't get an Autobahn because you can't get it without that sunroof, which is a shame. You'll also notice that the headrests are now integrated with these seats as well, so I don't know if that's good or bad. You can't adjust them, they're fixed. I don't know. They're comfortable enough for me, so we'll go with it. So VW's latest infotainment system is actually pretty good. This is the home screen. You've got various different options, including telephone, radio, navigation, some vehicle settings, ambient light, sound, app connect, etc. If you swipe your finger over here, you get maps, you get what you're playing on the radio. This is your vehicle setting, and then your telephone. And of course it has that system where you, as you approach, the letters appear. It's really cool stuff. And then the final screen shows you your phone connection and then some basic information about how far you've traveled, etc. So every time you go into one of these, we'll go into vehicle real quick, and you decide, oh, I want to go somewhere else, you just hit the square, and that's basically your home button. So in vehicle, you can play around with the exterior lights, mirrors, tires, headlights. In the interior, you can go ahead and you can change seats, interior lighting. Let's click on seats. So you've got easy entry for the driver's seat if you want that set up that way. Cockpit will show you how you want your eco tips or resets and start driving data, etc., etc. There's a few little settings in there that you can change. There's also ambient lights. I really like this. It's kind of silly, but it's cool. Orange is like a little bit in your face. Eternity, a little bit cooler. I stick to cool blue. Euphoria and Vitality, whichever one you want, whichever your mood is, you can change it to anything that you want. It's super cool. What are the bad things? Well, there's 4 buttons down here surrounding the hazard button. Assist systems will show you distance to car in front. P menu is for parking if you're looking for a parking spot. And then here's your climate button. So you have to press the climate button to go into here, to change direction of flow, air, recirc, change the temperature, and then go into the heated or cooled seats. It's just clunky. Give me some physical buttons here. You do have some sliders for the music, but again, it's really difficult to control while you're driving. And then you can also do this here as well, with your finger to change the temperature, but it's clunky to use. I really don't like it. Button I do like though is the mode button. This gives you 4 different modes. You can customize the custom mode. Obviously I have it all set to sport except for the ACC. You can also pick, when you go to mode, you can hit the sport or comfort, a bit more relaxing, and then eco, which basically it barely changes down and tries to save you as much gas as possible. I've been in custom for most of the time. So on the steering wheel, you've got these capacitive buttons here, and accidentally you hit the put the heated steering wheel on all the time with the palm of your hand. It's annoying. The rest of these buttons will control the excellent new driver's digital display. So I have it currently set to GTI mode. So I've got the sort of honeycomb in the background, speedo in the middle, tachometer around it, music on the right, fuel on the left. You hit the view button on the steering wheel though, and you can change it to have the date and the time in the middle. It moves the tacho to the left, it moves the speed to the right. You got digital and analog, music and fuel. I like that display too. Hit the view button again, shows you navigation embedded behind it. Hit the button again, it shows you your safety systems, how far you are from the vehicle in front. Hit the button again, you get a more EV style of gauge. So no tachometer, just a speed and the 2 options that you want on the side. Now you can change those 2 options on the side really easily. You hit one of the 2 buttons. You can change it to audio, telephone, speed, time, acceleration, performance, charge pressure, start, stop. There's infinite numbers, well, almost infinite numbers of stuff that you can put on there. I usually choose audio. Click on the right button, you got the same thing. Fuel tank display, what gear you're in, all sorts of good stuff that you can have it on, and just hit OK, hit view again, and this is definitely by far my favorite. So right below those buttons that operate the mode, etc., you've got a Wi-Fi charger. It's nice and large. The phone fits in there really easily. It charges through my case. All good. If you don't want to use that, you can use the 2 chargers, the 2 USBs. This center section is all new. Your stop-start's been relocated here from up there by the wheel. This is your selection for park, and then your tiny little stubby gear selector, reverse, neutral, regular, D, and sport mode, and then right below that is a parking brake. Now, materials quality, in my opinion, is not the best in this car, and some of this plastic down here is pretty scratchy. This cup holder is a sort of an adjustable cup holder, so in normal operation you just put your cup in there, but if you want to press this button you can actually hide it away by just doing that. Pretty simple. 12 bolts right here. And then the armrest pulls forward and back, and then you can also open it up to reveal some storage space. And then it's on that crank thing, so you can have it at various different heights depending on where you would prefer to have your arm sit. All right, let's take it for a drive. I've got it in custom mode, which I showed you earlier. I'm gonna put it into S mode, and off we go. This bit's a bit off-road, so it's a bit bumpy. I'll find the real road in a minute. Look at that, the GTI does a little off-road work too. How about that? I wouldn't recommend it, but anyway. So the first thing you do notice is that additional power and torque. Actually feels like it's got more than 241 horsepower, but hey. The other thing you notice is the steering is very good, and that for a front-wheel drive vehicle, it doesn't really understeer, which is another good thing. I mean, just going into these tight twisties here, hold onto the wheel tightly, but it goes around, and you don't feel like it's going to plow on straight ahead. So obviously I have driven it a little bit previous to this, and so my initial thoughts were, it reminds me of like a baby Golf R. The new engine, exhaust rather, the exhaust sounds really good. It has a sound, whereas previously the GTIs were not that good. This will pop and crackle on the overrun. It actually sounds pretty good. But it drives a little bit like a baby Golf R. It doesn't quite have the power, but the Golf R had something in the region of about 275 foot-pounds, if I remember rightly. Maybe 280 foot-pounds. And this one's not short of that, so it definitely has the grunt. It definitely feels pretty quick. The other thing I like is that previous GTIs in S mode, they would rev too far, hold on to the revs too long. They've programmed this transmission perfectly. But this thing goes, it really goes. And even though I have a somewhat irrational hatred of Bridgestones, these Potenza S005s are actually pretty good. And I haven't had a squeal or a complaint from them just yet. But yeah, this thing is very composed. You can immediately feel the difference between this and the 7 or the 7.5 version, which was that mid version that they came out with. You can get on the power earlier coming out, and you can hustle this thing. Steering is really good. Obviously, comfort mode does tone it down a little bit. You really don't want to be at 10/10ths all of the time. Overall, though, it does feel firmer than the old GTI. It's more grown up, I think, is what I'm looking for. So it sort of has lost a little bit of the old rawness, particularly when you think back all the way down to the Mark II 16 valve. That thing was pretty raw, but a great car. And then VW lost the plot. The Mark III, the 4, they lost the plot there until they got the 2.0 that's in this, the turbo. Even in these tight turns, it goes really well. I mean, God, these Bridgestone's grip too. Makes me think that I don't think I'd be too concerned about putting some more power into this car through the front wheels. VW does have the TCR version with a little over 300 horsepower, only in Europe, sadly, not here. So doing a stage 1 chip on this, I feel like this new chassis suspension setup would cope with it pretty well. So the Mark 8 is supposed to be around 0.8 of a second quicker to 60. I can definitely believe that. Now it does suffer from still, and this is irritating, from that slight tip in on takeoff. So if you're at a set of lights and you mash the pedal, it just has that delay and then it goes. And it's annoying, and I don't know why VW has that. Once on the move, this is a fantastic little car. All right, we're going to hop on the freeway in a little bit. It's got tons of grip from the front. So that limited strip diff does wonders for this car. I mean, even when you're turning the wheels and just mash it, it still maintains grip. You see the traction control light comes on a couple of times when you do that, but big improvements from a chassis control perspective. I like it. Brakes are good too. Good stopping power with the brakes. Never feel like they're overheating or not going to stop you, which is a good thing. I must say I'm very impressed with the way this has been improved and how it drives now. And I've driven pretty much every version. All right, mash the throttle onto the freeway. Pretty good ride on the freeway. If I put it in comfort mode, it would be a little better than this. sport mode, you definitely hear the box starts. So what do we think? Well, this is definitely the best GTI that there's ever been. There's been some clunkers, there's been some excellent cars in the past. I still like the Mark II 16 valve, probably one of my all-time favorites. But since the introduction of this turbocharged 2-liter engine, this one in this iteration is by far the quickest and the best handling GTI that there has ever been. For me, it feels a little bit like a baby Golf R. In fact, it's almost got the same amount of torque as the Golf R used to have. Yes, there's some problems. The interior is annoying. All they would have to do is give me some physical HVAC buttons and a physical volume control, and the car would be fantastic. I can't give it that rating because it isn't quite there. So maybe VW will have a 8.5 little refresh in a couple of years and fix those problems. But until then, do not let that stop you from going out and either driving or buying one of these, because you will not be making a mistake. Alrighty, once again, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Please like, subscribe. We'll catch you next time with another video. Out.